Today's video is about one of the darkest cases I've ever dealt with. We're talking about 16-year-old Becky Watts, who was taken from life for truly heinous reasons. Bristol is the most populous city in southwestern England and is the most popular domestic travel destination for Britons. In mid-February 2015, the otherwise safe city was thrown into turmoil. People who did not normally get along well joined forces to search for a missing girl. The girl's name was Becky Mary Watts. Becky was born in Bristol in June 1998 and was a happy child who could be enthusiastic about almost anything. Her parents separated when she was just 3 years old. She moved in with her father and his new partner. She had a good relationship with him. It was always Becky and him against the rest of the world. His new partner also brought a son into the relationship. He was 12 years older than her, and his name was Nathan Matthews. When Becky was 13, the once happy girl became increasingly withdrawn and secretive. Her classmates and friends teased her about her weight. They said she was too fat. Becky heard the voices of her supposed friends in her head over and over again and eventually believed them, which is why she stopped eating. She really didn't eat anything anymore and became increasingly unhappy because she couldn't achieve the ideal weight she had in mind. And even though she really didn't eat anything anymore, she perceived herself as getting fatter in the mirror every day. It didn't take long for her father to intervene and seek professional help. Becky was diagnosed with anorexia, and after some back and forth, she agreed to therapy and realized she had a problem. Over the next few months, her physical and mental health improved, and she developed into a normal teenager according to social norms, without any major problems, looking forward to the future with an open mind. At the time of her disappearance, she had a boyfriend. His name was Luke, and he was training to be an automotive mechatronics technician. He was also the last person to send Becky a message. This is the message. On February 18th, the day before she disappeared, she was at a party and stayed overnight at a friend's house, where they watched movies after the party. On February 19th, she came home. There she met her stepmother, Anja Gelsworthy, with whom she spoke briefly, but who left for a doctor's appointment a short time later. That was around 11:15 a.m. When Anja returned home, Becky was gone. And that was strange, because Becky had social anxiety disorder, and it was uncharacteristic of her to just disappear. Her father later recounted situations that Becky avoided because of this. For example, she preferred to walk home rather than take the bus because she was afraid of having to talk to the bus driver when she had to buy a ticket. She was also unable to simply go into a store without having a panic attack. It's always upsetting when you can't reach your child. But Becky's father was even more alarmed because his 16-year-old daughter wouldn't just disappear like that. Nevertheless, they didn't report her missing until the next day, after they had searched for her themselves and called every possible contact who might know Becky. That's why the search for 16-year-old Becky Watts didn't begin until February 20th, 2015. The Watts house was searched, and it turned out that Becky's phone, tablet, and laptop were missing. No money or clothes were stolen from her closets. When people tried to call her, the voicemail kicked in immediately, and Becky, like everyone else her age and us, was almost always glued to her little screen. That's why her friends eventually became concerned and called her parents to ask where she was, because she was no longer online. That was also the point at which her parents became very worried. Something seemed wrong. The police presented the case to the public and asked people to keep an eye out for Becky. In order to stir up emotions, and probably because they were simply desperate, her parents also stepped into the spotlight with heavy hearts and emphasized the importance of finding their daughter. During the first press conference, her father said the following:
"Becky, if you're watching this, please come home."
The community responded to the calls for help. The hashtag #FindBecky trended on Twitter for several days, and the entire town seemed to be leaving no stone unturned in an effort to bring Becky home safely, but no one could locate her. Shortly thereafter, the first clue emerged. Initially, it was thought that Becky had been home alone when her stepmother left for her doctor's appointment, but that turned out to be incorrect. Her stepbrother Nathan Matthews and his girlfriend Shauna Hoare were in the house with her. As mentioned, Nathan was 12 years older than Becky, so 28 at the time. Unfortunately, due to his poor health, he was unable to find a job. He had rheumatism and fibromyalgia. Both conditions caused him pain every day, every hour, even when doing the most mundane tasks. Shauna and he had been together for almost 8 years. She's 6 years younger than Matthew, which is strange in retrospect. In any case, they lived together in the house with Becky, Anjay, and Becky's biological father. Shauna took professional care of Anjay, who had progressive multiple sclerosis, which is why she had been to the doctor on February 19th. So it wasn't Anjay who last saw Becky, but Shauna and Nathan. However, they said that they didn't see her, but only heard her slam the door as she presumably left the house. Shauna described the situation as follows. She and Nathan arrived at the house around 11 a.m. The door was locked, so they used the key under the doormat to get in. When they opened the door, they heard music coming from Becky's room. Shauna then went to the kitchen to get a cigarette, went outside and fed her rabbits. According to her own statements, this took about 15 to 20 minutes. After that, she went back inside, washed her hands and poured herself a drink when she suddenly heard the door slam. She didn't think anything of it, went into the living room, and it wasn't until later that evening that she was asked if she had seen Becky. Even then, she reportedly said that she had only heard her. At first glance, this doesn't sound too suspicious. The only strange thing is that it came out so late, even though she is said to have mentioned it directly. What is also strange is that Nathan avoided the police and the public. This was also addressed by the police officer during the second interview with Shauna, which can also be found online. He pointed out to her that his colleagues had tried to reach Nathan but were unable to get through to him. She evaded him and said that she knew nothing about it and emphasized that he was also worried about Becky, precisely because she meant so much to his mother. After the interview with Shauna, Nathan agreed to be interviewed. In conversation with the officer, he said that he didn't particularly like Becky, probably because she meant so much to his mother. If he was worried, it wasn't about Becky herself, but because her disappearance was causing his mother so much concern. Nathan said Becky was self-centered and he didn't like how she treated his mother. Of course, he also had to describe the situation on February 19th again, and his version matched Shauna's version 100%. Really, 100%. It was the same story, so the officers knew they had coordinated their stories. But that was all they could do, because there was no evidence against Nathan and Shauna. So the investigation and the search continued. The police searched the house again and found traces of blood on Becky's door. And on the bloodstains, they found a fingerprint. While the whole of Bristol had been searching for Becky for a week, the DNA traces were sent to the lab. When they came back, the police officer's assumption that something was strange about Nathan and Shauna's story was confirmed. The fingerprint belonged to Nathan. The two were taken back to the station and remanded in custody as suspected perpetrators. At first, they assumed, or rather hoped, that Becky was still alive. They thought it might just be a kidnapping, but this hope was slim because the story the two had initially told the police served to provide them with an alibi, and there was no ransom demand or letter from the kidnappers. During the renewed questioning, the investigators realized that Shauna was lying. So they went back to the Watts house to look for more clues. But the investigators found it difficult because the house was clean. Too clean. almost sterile. The only thing they found were receipts from a hardware store dated February 20th, the day the missing persons report was filed. They had purchased a circular saw, gloves, safety goggles, and a face mask. Inside the house, it did not appear as though they were planning to remodel anything, which reinforced the suspicion that the two had harmed Becky. After several interrogations, the two confessed. Nathan admitted to the crime, more or less. He said that he had only wanted to teach her a lesson by kidnapping her. During the kidnapping, he had accidentally strangled her. He simply hated the way she treated his mother. According to his statements, it was an accident. Now they finally knew what had happened to Becky. Her body was found just a few days later. But the investigators uncovered dark secrets that no one had expected. Nathan and Shauna apparently had dark fantasies, or rather, an obsession. Their dream was to kidnap a girl and do unspeakable things to her. Messages appeared in which both of them talked about it. The following are some quotes from them.
Shit, bring me 2 pretty girls.
I just saw a pretty girl in the store. I almost knocked her out and brought her home. Lol.
It becomes clear that the girls in their fantasies were Becky's age, which is why they eventually saw Becky as the target and temptation of their desires. After further questioning and investigation, it turned out that Nathan came to the house with handcuffs shortly after Anjay went to the doctor. With the handcuffs and a knife, he went into Becky's room, overpowered her, and stabbed her 15 times. They put her body in the trunk of Nathan's car and returned to the house. When Becky's disappearance was noticed sometime later, they pretended to everyone. They helped with the search, even though Becky could have been found right in front of the investigators' eyes. After the house had been searched and everyone had left to look for her elsewhere, Nathan and Shauna brought Becky's body back into the house and chopped it up in the bathtub. They packed the pieces into plastic bags mixed with salt. Then they hid them in a neighbor's garden shed. Nathan and Shauna said afterwards that their relationship was more than toxic. Nathan is said to have strangled, dominated, and abused Shauna. The only thing that kept them together was the sick fantasy that they made come true with the crime against Becky. The trial began in October 2015. Shauna denied any knowledge of Nathan's plans and actions, even when her fingerprints were found on the plastic bags. Nathan, on the other hand, stuck to his story that he had strangled her accidentally, even though 15 knife wounds were found on Becky's body. When the text messages were presented as evidence of Shauna's complicity, she said she had meant them sarcastically. After 5 long weeks, the verdict was finally reached. Neither of their versions was believed. The evidence pointed to a much darker crime. Nathan was sentenced to 33 years without the possibility of early release for murder and kidnapping. Shauna was sentenced to 17 years for manslaughter. And that brings us to the end of today's video. What do you think about this case? And do you think the sentences they received were justified? 17 years for manslaughter, even though Shauna helped dismember the body of a young woman, is, in my personal opinion, something that, how can I put it without sounding like an angry citizen, seems too lenient. But that's just my personal opinion. What do you think? Feel free to write your thoughts in the comments. And if you liked the video, please leave a like, comment, and/or subscribe. That really helps support the channel. I'm not just saying that, it's true. Thank you in advance, and thank you for watching. Good night, and see you next time.